Why do people put salt in their water?
Oh, great question.
Why do people put salt in their water? Is this like a hydration question?
I've heard it's good for hydration, but what's the actual benefit?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's several. Let's go ahead and Steven, you want to kick this off, dude?
Yeah, that's something that I do regularly. Add salt to my my morning shake, my morning elixir. Yeah, primarily just for improving hydration. It's going to increase blood volume. If you're doing this before a workout, it's going to increase your pump. It's going to help with your stamina, with your endurance. It's not a bad practice. I would say try to lean towards like your pink Himalayan salt. I use Redmond Relight, high mineral content salt.
It's a good one.
And yeah, maybe try to stay away from your Morton's iodized.
Yeah, there's
The blue box.
a couple of reasons for that. One is like there are a lot of times there are anti-caking agents being put into these salts, which aren't necessarily that great for you. And you can see that right on the side of the bottle, like going back to Morton's iodized and does it still come in like the card with the blue cardboard with the guy with the
umbrella
little
chick,
girl with the
cylinder.
umbrella? I mean, that shit's been around for ages. I mean, it's an American icon, I guess, at this point. But yeah, look out for the anti-caking agents. You mentioned a couple of good ones right there. Yeah, the salt thing we've seen a lot of brands sort of come out with some electrolyte type mixes that you can throw in your drinks. So you put specifically like salt right into this thing.
Yeah.
Versus people are buying these, kind of
Packets.
ready-made packets and they're dropping them in their water bottles, 16, 20 ounces of water, whatever. Those can also be very good. They contain a few extra things in there when we start looking at what the body's needs from a hydration perspective. You just mentioned it's going to help with hydration. It's going to help with blood volume. We should probably talk about kind of the reasons why that happens and why it's important at times to make sure you have that salt in your system to stay hydrated. So maybe we just kind of cover a couple things. Like when you put that salt in there, when you put water in your system, if you don't have salt on board to help retain that water, right? The water pushes water and goes right out. It can actually be dehydrated. So you can be drinking all the water in the world and still be dehydrated to some extent. Hyponatremia is a thing, and it can be, but that's one of the things is to keep the water on board and push it where it needs to go.
Yeah.
It's also for muscle contraction, right?
Absolutely.
So you need those electrolytes to help stimulate we won't get into the nitty gritty of the physiology, but muscle fiber contraction.
Any cellular response that says yay in a cell is sodium. Sodium enters the cell and then it excites it. So sodium is
You have your positive, negative ions, right?
It's extremely important cellularly. Right?
Yeah, your heart runs on, or I call it like a sodium potassium pump in terms of making those electrical contractions happen so that the blood comes in and out the way it's supposed to. So adding salt to your water helps with many things: performance, hydration, and then blood volumization, which is part of both in terms of transporting nutrients in and out of where it needs to go.
Yeah, cognition as well.
Yeah.
I
can't forget about that.
Yeah. It's gonna help you be sharper. I think the question always becomes that, well, isn't sodium going to raise my blood pressure? Isn't sodium going to cause heart disease?
Right.
I was diagnosed as hypertensive. My doctor said, stop salting my food. That's probably one of the most common misconceptions that I see, that I observe. It's the number one recommendation anyone who's diagnosed as hypertensive gets from their doctor is, okay, you need to ban salt from your life. Really, sodium gets a bad rap when most of the time it's more so a deficiency in potassium than it is an excess of sodium that's causing your problems. Minerals are all about balance.
And also they're eating the preservative sodium. It's they're eating the packaged food. There's 3 grams in it where you couldn't salt your food to overeat sodium like when the doctor says cut it out. Most of these people are having hungry man meals 3 times a day. They got fucking 4 grams of sodium in their body. You can't salt your food to get that much.
Yeah, right. Your food will taste terrible. Yeah. But the processed food it masks.
Concentrated.
It masks the sodium content. But yeah, everyone's like, okay, well, I need to ditch my salt shaker. No.
Yeah, I'm not, just in terms of like what products you mentioned, kind of types of salt. I'm not promoting any one specific product. I do not get paid by Element, Rob Wolf and his team over there, but I think they've done an excellent job with a very affordable, accessible products, easily transported. It tastes good. You can put it in like 16 ounces of water and it tastes great. It doesn't taste salty. It's really great. I just came back from a trip. I was in very South Georgia.
South.
That was not Kansas anymore. It was very south. The weather was was taxing while we were out on the firing range for several days in a row. It got humid. It was 90 some odd percent humidity with 90-degree temperatures. And so people listening to this that live in those regions are like, yeah, dude, it's not that hot yet. But for me, coming from, a very temperate region, it's a really interesting climate that we have here in California, it was markedly different. And everybody there, somebody had brought, one of the guys had brought one of those big shoe boxes you get from Element if you order their stuff in bulk, and we just threw it into basically, it was like a cafeteria or like team room thing at the beginning. Everybody was just grabbing that shit and putting it down, and it was very, very helpful. There were times at night where I recognized I still didn't drink enough. It was crampy. Get the little calf cramps, that one that wakes you up in the middle of the fucking night. Thank God I didn't have a roommate, or he probably would have shot me. He's like, "There's a fucking bear in here," or something like that. But yeah. That's why people have salt in their water.
Next question. If you had to pick 2 exercises to do every day to get the best aesthetic results, would they be push-ups and pull-ups? Just want confirmation I'm on the right path. I've done 1 set of max pull-ups and 1 set of max push-ups every day for the past 2 months. Love the show. Appreciate it.
Wow.
Yeah, that is a lot.
Every day.
That's a very, to be honest, it's a very lazy take into fitness and trying to get something done. So just to start that out.
With the mindset.
I'm glad that you're working out and you're pushing yourself, but that mindset for 2 movements, if you're doing max pull-ups and push-ups every day, you obviously are pushing yourself. Why can't you add some more movements?
Yeah, at some point too, the time put in when you started this to the time you're putting in now to get the max numbers, whatever there are, that leaves plenty of time in there to add in other movements. In terms of picking those movements, we could talk about that. That's always goal dependent. And I think the guy said, or this person is saying, what is goal? I'm assuming it's a dude. But what this person alluded to was aesthetically, what would you pick? Well, here's the deal. Like push-ups and pull-ups are going to be great, for some upper body strength, endurance, even power if you're, varying those, how you're applying that exercise to yourself. But you're going to start looking, from an aesthetics perspective, you're going to start looking very imbalanced.
Top heavy.
Fairly quickly if that's all you're doing. So go back to being lazy. I think that there's a little bit of a lazy way to look at it. But at the same time, I also get I need to do something. So, okay, you've been doing this for 2 months. It's definitely time to change it up.
Yeah.
It's definitely time to change it up. Your body is adapting. There's going to be, again, you can add variables to this to make your pull-up tougher or make your push-up tougher so that you continue to progress at least for a little while. But there's some other things that come along with this too. And aside from looking imbalanced, you're going to be imbalanced from a strength or movement perspective. But he's asking for 2 exercises.
You got to get some rows in there.
Yeah, some horizontal pulling.
I'm going to change this to, I'm going to I'm going to go I'm going to change it up and I'm going to say, hey man, continue to do your pull-ups and your push-ups, but don't do them every day. On the other 2 days, do some lunges or some squats.
There we go.
Right? Air squats or step ups or reverse lunges or laterals, lunges or something like that. And try to figure out a way to do some type of a horizontal pull, grab onto a pull-up bar or go to a park and find something you can, or a tree branch or some shit that you can grab onto and do more of a rowing movement on. So like a lunge and a row on day 2. And then on day 3, there's, I don't know, what would you guys say? Some rotational movement or something like that?
I guess. Core. I don't know. I have a hard time with this question. I'd say, if you're looking for aesthetics, maybe focus on your nutrition.
Yeah, there's that too. But he's asking for exercises.
I would honestly pick one exercise for each muscle and try to go through it. Well,
that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make sure he's hitting everything here. That's my thought process.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
So one of the things we didn't hit would be an overhead press. So if this dude's doing max pull-ups and max push-ups and he's been doing it for 2 months, he may be able to handle a handstand type push-up, a supported handstand type push-up. I would look at it as what 2 exercises should I do daily in order to get the best aesthetic result, not pick 2 and just stick with
Use
that
those forever.
Yeah. That would be my point. But I think it's a mindset thing, and you got to think a little bit outside the box if you don't have equipment. And I'll give the guy credit; he probably maybe doesn't have an equipment or whatever. I don't know, but push-ups and pull-ups are great exercises, but long term that's going to be very limited.
Yeah, for aesthetics. For sure. If that's
Next question. I drink a lot of caffeine, 2 to 3 cups of coffee in the morning and an energy drink in the afternoon. I'm not sure how many milligrams in total, but it's a daily habit at this point. What are the long-term effects and what are some tips for kicking this caffeine addiction?
Caffeine. Awesome drug. It's an amazing drug.
So accessible.
I think with this question, there probably should be some qualifiers here, which we won't have answers to. And one of those things is like, okay, there's a cup of coffee, and then there's my cup of coffee.
Yep.
Yeah. That was my first thought. Was what are these cups of coffee looking like? What strain are we talking about here?
What strain? Yeah, how concentrated is this coffee? Where's it coming from? Like a cup of espresso is different than a cup of drip coffee. From a concentration perspective, no doubt about it. So I guess the question is like, how much is too much? What are the effects of that? We've talked about these things on the show, but just in general, like the question I would ask is like, why do you think you're drinking so much coffee? And more specifically, caffeine, because that was the root of the question. Why do you think you're doing that? And I think the statement was there. It's become a habit. So how much is too much? That is the $1 million question. That is the $1 million question. It's very individual, but
Depends, yeah.
I guess the guideline that I typically go by is 400 milligrams is sort of your daily cap. More than that, I think that is some type of official recommendation that 400 milligrams is about as high as you want to go daily, and above that, it may have negative health effects. As far as I think that was part of the question, right? What might the negative health effects be? Mm-hmm. It could increase your blood pressure. It could interfere with your sleep, which could then have a ton of downstream effects and just really be just super taxing on your nervous system.
Yeah, from a cognitive perspective as well, because you're just kind of pushing all the buttons and some of the reward centers there. But going back to that 400 milligrams, there's outside of creatine, right? There's not a more studied performance supplement or performance substance than caffeine. Mm-hmm. So there's a ton of research on it. So I think you're right on with that, Stephen. And so it's basically like, what do I need to? What can I take to get max performance benefits from? And that includes cognition. That includes a greater sense of well-being. An increased blood pressure is a thing, right? Vasodilation. The things that happen when you do put caffeine in your system. But beyond that 400 milligrams, you're not getting any more benefit. So then what happens, right? So you mentioned like the sleep disturbance and things like that. I mean, think about this. I mean, you're basically pushing that go button all the time. Yeah. We talk about sleep and stress management as one of the major pillars in health and wellness, but also getting, in being able to perform. Pushing that go button all the time has downstream deleterious, downstream effects.
Bad,
yeah. It could be bad.
It could be bad. And I guess their question is they say, hey, I have a daily habit. Well, what is it interfering with? Are you not sleeping? Are you experiencing, irritability and all of these things that happen during the day? Are you needing caffeine to work out? Are you needing these things to feel like you have energy? That's an issue that you need to look at via nutrition, your sleep, all these things. What is it affecting, right? Because if whatever you're drinking isn't affecting, you have great sleep and all these things don't matter, that's fine. That's a perfect amount for you.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. The way it was posed lets me know kind of as a listener that this person is concerned, like they have some concerns that they may be doing something that isn't necessarily good for them. And I think that's pretty telling, because if you're asking that question, it's highly likely that you probably are, and you're recognizing what Jeff just said, that there's some stuff going on here, and maybe it's the caffeine, maybe it's not. How do I identify, what it could, what is an effect of the caffeine or not? But here's the other thing, like none of the things that we've mentioned, right? Decrease in performance, irritability, increased blood pressure, disruptive sleep patterns, things like that, can ever be attributed to one thing. Yep. Not ever. True. But what we want to do in order to understand what those things are that could be contributing, if you're feeling any of those things, if you're witnessing or experiencing any of those things, is to go back and adjust some things, right? And your caffeine intake is a very, very easy thing to adjust, theoretically. Now, I'll tell you, let's go back to this trip I just mentioned a minute ago.
I wondered if that was going to come up.
Holy shit. So it was like we were deep into day 2. Talked about the humidity. This was very let's just say this was heavy on my brain.
Mentally taxing.
It was a mentally taxing course that I was taking. And there was getting the food in was a little bit tough, and it was up very late. I was actually recording podcasts at the end of these days. And so I was like giving a lot of energy and trying to receive a lot of energy and all these things. It's like late into day 2, and I'm like, I had to step back for a minute. My performance was really sucking at this point, and the instructor came over to me, and he goes, "Dude, you okay?" And I go, "Man, I don't know, man. I'm not feeling good at all. I'm feeling like I might be coming down with something." He's like, "What, just throat sore or thing like that?" I'm going, "No, I'm just having this like, fuzzy head, right?" And it's like what you'd feel like before like the flu comes on, and I'm like, and I'm just going to drink some more water, maybe try to put some food in me and sit in the shade for a little bit or whatever and try to get together. And then it fucking hit me. I hadn't had any caffeine in 2 days. I had no caffeine in 2 days. That was withdrawals.
Yep.
That's what that was. Mm-hmm. And I know what it was because I felt that way for the remainder of the day. It kind of eased off a little bit. I got my fucking car. I drove 30 minutes into town and I just started grabbing anything I could off the shelf. Oh, I had 2 fucking Monsters, which I don't do those, right? And I grabbed all the canned coffee I could get that didn't have dairy and sugar in it off the thing. And I literally pounded a Monster before I walked out the door. I was standing in line. I was just drinking it. 15 minutes later, good as gold.
Damn.
So that was a really good indicator. I am taking onboarding too much caffeine, and I am, right away I knew it. And I was like, oh shit, that was a real eye opener for me that what I am doing from a caffeine intake is probably not the healthiest practice that I'm in. And I have 2 cups of coffee a day. On occasion, it's 3, 2 of my cups of coffee a day. And at some point later in the day, I'll recaffeinate with something with very little caffeine. From the bigger perspective, like it says it might have 150 to 200 megs of caffeine in it, but it's being offset with things like taurine and other things that are in the drink.
Good old taurine.
So, just some perspective on your caffeine intake.
Yeah, I think and then the question did mention weaning off of caffeine. I think cold turkey is probably not going to be a good approach.
I can attest to that.
Yeah, cold turkey is probably not going to be a good approach. Mm-hmm. So it would be my suggestion. There actually is a product that has recently come out, a brand called Glaxon that's been very popular in the last couple of years.
I'm intrigued.
And it's a product called CeTox. A friend of mine actually tried this who is very into coffee, and he was trying to, basically kick caffeine for like a month, 45 days or something like that. So there's a specific caffeine detox product. So that's kind of novel and kind of new. And those guys actually, the formulator, he really knows what he's doing. He comes out with some really high-end products. But if you're, not interested in that, I would say trying to titrate down, mm-hmm. and maybe adding in some type of adaptogenic herb, some type of ginseng, ashwagandha, rhodiola, something along those lines that may help kind of boost you up and give you a little bit of that cognitive support so you don't get the brain fog crash, mm-hmm. While you are gradually titrating down the amount of caffeine that you're consuming. Because cold turkey, you're probably gonna feel like shit. You're gonna get a massive headache. I don't know if you had a headache as well.
That didn't occur. I was kind of waiting for that to happen. I was waiting to get full blown sick. That's what I felt like. I mean, I felt like I was getting the flu. Yeah, that's what I felt like. So, great advice on the adaptogenic stuff.
And also, we have a podcast with Steven
talking about the adaptogens. Yeah. Go back and listen to that. There's one on adaptogens and one on nootropics. In case you're confused, listen to that. And he's also put out quite a bit of information. If you're like, I don't have time for a podcast, okay, cool. Then don't listen to the podcast. There's clips everywhere. But he also does What's Up Wednesdays on our Red Dot feed, and there's stuff in there on both of those things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. I was a beast in the gym when I was younger, but it's been about 10 years since I followed a legit program. Is it a bad idea to jump into RDF strong, or is there anything you have that's good for the out-of-shape athlete who wants to get it back?
Great question. Mm-hmm. This is the one we get all the time, and I'm just going to start. I'm going to say this and then let you guys kind of jump into it. That is exactly why we built Red Dot Fitness Strong.
Yep.
This is the person. It could also be a person that's never done this before, but or never worked out before. We call it. It's a program from novice to intermediate. And when I say novice, I mean somebody that's probably dabbled a little bit and is comfortable and has access to a gym. comfortable with and has access and even like a home gym equipment, we've tried to boil it down so you don't need a ton of things, but there are basic things you need. This is the perfect question for this show, and or for that program. I mean, many reasons why. Cue CeCe.
Partake in RDF Strong.
Cue CeCe to talk about RDF Strong, why it's perfect for this guy.
I mean, we go through 4 phases, and then the first phase is your
preparatory.
Adaptation phase.
Adaptation phase. Yeah, your preparatory phase. So, I mean, it's built for that person. So, it takes you through a nice gradual process. The movement patterns aren't anything that are too challenging. I mean, it's your basic movement patterns: squatting, some hinging, some pushing, and some pulling.
I think when people hear that, they go, "Oh, no, I'm way beyond that." And my first,
but you have the option to skip that phase as well.
This is true, but I would also just remind, like, this specific person asking the questions, like, hey, if you used to be a beast, this is going to be perfect for you because it's going to reintroduce you to things that you're very familiar with, and also clue you into what you're not that great at anymore and where you're lacking. That's the whole purpose of this, is to really prep you for the next 3 phases that we go through. So there's a bit of a conditioning piece here too. So you've been out of the game a while, like trying to jump back in is not a great idea, right back into it at a hardcore level. It's not a great idea for a lot of reasons, but that's why we put this adaptation phase, or so this phase 1 in there, is to get you refamiliarized, also build up your conditioning, build your confidence, and gives you, some real insight to, where you might need to be really focusing now as compared to 2 years ago. Then you get into hypertrophy. Then you get into the capacity building, where we're really starting to ramp things up, and then you get into sort of the more of the max strength stuff for that particular program. So, no, that is the best program for you to get into along the way, because it is not complicated. Mm-hmm. There's complexity in there that we've taken care of for you, but it's not complicated. It's a 4-day-a-week program. It's very easy to follow, and it's one of those things, like, I think a lot of people worry about this too, walking into their local gym with the program, being out of shape, not feeling awesome, and then being asked to do things that they're really unfamiliar with, or do what could be considered like a non-conventional or kind of a crazy exercise, and feeling like you're looking like an idiot. We're not doing that here. So it's super basic, trying to get people to really have a nice entryway into this, and you can evaluate. There's some personalization you can put to it too. Well, Steven, you've had some firsthand experience with it. I don't know what you want to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think that's. I don't think I would ever have described myself as a beast in the past, but I definitely used to lift much heavier and was much more focused on strength training before I kind of transitioned more to endurance training. So when I started RDF Strong now, like 4 or 5 months ago, actually as of this week, I'm starting it again.
Nice.
I'm running it back.
Good shit.
Lovely.
But yeah, I definitely, as you described, it was movements that I had done in the past where my strength had diminished quite a bit because I was just focused on other things. And over the course of the program, I did start to notice, like, oh, okay, now it's coming back to me. Some, I'm getting back to the numbers that I used to put up, several years ago when I was more focused on strength training. And yeah, it wasn't anything, where it was overly complicated or, like these movements were completely foreign to me. Maybe some of them, you had to kind of refresh a little bit, watch the tutorial, like, okay, like I remember this, but let me just double check to make sure that I'm doing this correctly, that my form is right. Maybe that something is, sometimes exercises have different names.
Right,
okay.
yeah.
Like, okay, I know that movement pattern. I just didn't know that that's what it was called.
Yeah, they got 17 names.
Yeah. So you got the tutorial videos there, just to reference for, but you're not, it's not like I had to sit down and like, let me study this workout. It was like, okay, during the workout, let me just double check. My technique is correct here. Let me watch the video for 10 seconds. All right, I'm good. We go into it.
I have a question for you. I have a question for you because you're not the first person I've heard that has gone back through Strong. Mm-hmm. Why are you going back through Strong? Why didn't you just go to Max?
Well, for my personal goals, max strength and max power isn't really my ball game. I'm getting more into now. I'm ramping up my running volume, and I'm going to be getting into some longer distance races. And being bigger than I am now is not really super advantageous to what I'm looking to accomplish. But that's just me personally.
Yep. That's a great answer.
Absolutely. And also for the beast, right? Start low with the volume. You don't need to go out crazy.
That's strong.
Don't leave the volume on the table, right? All of that shit's growth. You don't need to go and kill yourself.
Yeah,
Please.
that's the beauty of strong, is like we've really managed that for you. And you alluded to Max, the reasons why you're doing it or didn't do it or aren't doing it. If you're trying to maintain strength over time, and you're also trying to balance against other programming, like your running programming, whatever else, it is very doable. If you got an hour, 4 days a week, Red Dot Fitness Strong is a really good program to get into the mix. Yep.
Next question. What are the health benefits of magnesium?
Oh.
Where do we begin?
Yeah.
I was going to say it depends on what type of magnesium, right? Because somebody had mentioned that earlier.
Well, I'll preface it with this and then turn it over to you guys. But magnesium is one of the most, is one of the micronutrients that is most absent in people's bodies.
And it does so much.
Yeah, we're very deficient in it as humans. It's what we've found. So people got really on like the vitamin D train. The vitamin D and magnesium work hand in hand. They got on the D train during the thing that happened a couple years ago, or that we were talking about and fucking with, and still talking about somehow. I don't know, but people became a little bit more aware of their micronutrient intake. Magnesium was one of these things, and when we already knew this, but it became a little bit more well known that magnesium, zinc, vitamin D, these are all things people are generally very deficient in. And if you're deficient in those, you're much more likely to get sick, to not recover, to not sleep well, to have poor digestion.
Cognitive.
I just alluded to a couple things. So
To several. Yeah, I mean, like you said, CeCe, it can depend on, there's different forms of magnesium targeted for different purposes, but like, for example, a magnesium glycinate is going to be better for anxiety, for sleep. Magnesium citrate may be a little bit better for digestion if you are a little plugged up. Get some magnesium citrate in your system. There are some people who legitimately will, take magnesium for laxative purposes. There's your magnesium threonate that's going to be your cognitive boosting magnesium. There's magnesium taurate, which is magnesium and taurine, and that is helpful for cardiovascular health. There's your magnesium malate, which is magnesium and malic acid. People who have fibromyalgia, that's beneficial for them.
Pain control.
Yeah, pain control, for muscle contractions. Magnesium is super important for, I think it's the number I've heard is 300 enzymatic metabolic processes. Right. Minerals are a lot of times they're facilitators of these reactions that are very important.
And also, if you take drugs, and everyone's on a drug, you need to look at what cofactor it depletes. And a lot of the time it is magnesium and some of these things where if you're doing this daily, you need to make sure that you're getting it back through your diet.
Right.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, or supplementation.
Exactly.
Because a lot of food is deficient in vitamins and minerals versus, the same foods 50 years ago.
Yeah, so when we talk about supplementation, magnesium's got to be part of that in my mind. Whenever people are asking about multivitamins or what vitamins and minerals should I take, there are multivitamins out there that are very, very good with regard to dosages to help you maintain where you should be through diet and through your dietary intake, but also through supplementation. And a good multivitamin is going to have a healthy dose of magnesium in there.
Make sure it's not synthetic.
Yep. So where it's sourced is ultimately important. We've talked about supplements a lot on the show before and kind of where it's coming from. So many things: immune system, cognitive health, gut health, performance from like muscle contraction perspective, endurance, cardiovascular health. So many. Like, if there's some things you don't want to be, and I just mentioned a few of them, you don't want to be deficient in, magnesium's definitely one of those.
Next question. Been listening to the show for almost a year and love the Monday eps. Question for Jeff and CeCe. What does your personal stretching and mobility routine look like?
I can tell you CeCe's is non-existent.
That's not necessarily true.
No. No, she does stretch a little bit. She does. It's
my active dynamic warm up.
Yeah, I think let's talk about that.
I've said it multiple times. Like the mobility program that we have, that's probably the most underlooked portion of people's workout. And I will admit that that's the most underlooked portion of my workout.
Yep.
So, but I definitely take time for my active dynamic warm up. So I make sure that I work on going through ranges of motion that I'm going to be working out and increasing my heart rate, increasing my core temperature so that, I have an effective and efficient workout. I don't want to have a muscle strain or hurt myself in some other capacity. So, get all my nerves firing and muscles firing and those types of things. I will say that, my cool downs are lacking. And I will find time to stretch. Hate to admit it, but if I'm sore or if there's something going on.
So there's a couple of things with that I think with this question is that people think it needs to look a very specific way. Like stretching is this, mobility is this. It has to have a brand attached to it. It has to have some organization that, I was trained to through mobility training through this organization, and this is what this needs to look like. And somehow they've branded in coined terms or patented terms or whatever. It's all bullshit, right? It's marketing,
it's science.
and there's science behind it, and it's good. I'm not taking anything away from that, but I think the problem is that people they get their head wrapped around, oh well, this is proper mobility training. What you mentioned were the basic concepts. What is the point of mobility training? And I think so when you go through your active dynamic warm-up, you mentioned some things. Let's get the nervous system firing and awake, right? Let's get so that the neuromuscular system is working together. Let's get some increased circulation. Let's start to move fluids around in the joint, right? And get those things prepared to accept the things that we're about to hit them with. Then that's the benefit of doing this, right? But the tissue quality. But then the other part of it is really focusing on what I'm going to be training for the day. Like, what is my intention for the day, and how am I applying this active dynamic warm up? So you look at somebody over in the corner that's doing more. I want to hear what Jeff has to say here, but they're up moving around, right? And they're moving through things. And it may even look like they're doing a barbell squat, right? They may have a light bar on their back or whatever, and they're moving. That is an active dynamic. That is also mobility training and flexibility training, as long as it comes with the right intention. Like if you're just going through the motions without intention, I don't care if you're doing some stuff that I think we're going to hear Jeff talk about. That it doesn't matter if, again, intention is everything. So I just to throw that out there, I think, a lot of people look at this stuff as it has to look a certain way for everybody, or if you're this athlete, you need to do it this way. I think that's something that people should get out of their heads right away in terms of finding out what works for them and understand the concepts at large.
You do some mobility, don't you, Jeff? I've seen you do it a couple of times.
Jeff does some funky shit, man.
So the question was, what does our mobility program look like? Copy. So what CeCe alluded to is probably the most important.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Yeah, no, the pre-workout dynamic movement for what you are about to do. So just for me, I do a full body dynamic warm-up regardless of what I'm doing. After that warm-up, then I go and let's say I'm deadlifting that day. Well, I'm going to prime like a good morning hinge. I want my tissues on my hamstrings to slide and glide. I want to make sure that my back is flat, that everything is lined up. I'm looking in the mirror. I'm paying attention. I'm tight. I'm going through slow. I'm making sure everything's firing. When I go into this exercise, that is what's giving me the base in my head, my motor program, to now basically do this movement pattern better than just getting under the bar, throwing 135 on there and getting active, right? So the warm-up, the pre-warm-up to dynamically slide and glide tissues is extremely important, right? The viscosity of the extracellular matrix, which is, whatever, we don't get science, but it's everything that is outside your fascia. Your fascia sits in it, the cells, everything slides and glides through this. If this doesn't move, you don't get nutrients, you don't get anything to these cells. Tendons, the fascia, the cartilage needs movement to get nutrients in and waste products out. Right. So one thing, the mobility program is just fucking moving to keep all of this stuff non-stagnant. Right. So we have the pre-warm-up, we get into our movement. And then after the movement, when we're talking about mobility is the ability to move. Right. So when I have an expression of mobility, people always want to jump to, look at this guy doing sissy squats on a box when he leans back.
I love this.
It's great. He has an expression of mobility, which he worked on for years to obtain that capacity and that resiliency within those joints and those tissues and the body mechanics, right? So when we're looking at building and gaining mobility, it's actually a lot of strength training in an isometric capacity, right? So let's say I have someone that comes into a squat and they start butt winking. Well, now I know that I need to, one, work with their hamstrings extensibility. I need to get their body aware of how to load their hamstring and their glute back into a squat, right? So there's all of this body mechanics and rewiring that goes on with mobility, and you have to know where your compensations are so you can stop and do the opposite while you're trying to increase hip flexion or hip extension, low back extension, right? All of these things, because gaining mobility is extremely hard and needs to be centrated and focused. I need to be there. I need to be working with props. I need to have people on me, tactile feedback, right? All of these things.
Yeah, that intention piece is huge.
It's huge. Like you're talking about intention. Like, am I going to internal rotation? Am I pushing to my end range? Yes, this cramps and hurts. So so not to get on a rant, but like my mobility program, we have a warm up. I go through my exercises, and at the end, whatever I did, I'm doing myofascial stretches, and these stretches are designed to realign the structures, my bony structures, to where the lines that go through them are in line. They're called trabeculae, but they apply force the way that it should be through the bone. So if your structure is off and those lines don't line up, you're not going to have good tissue quality and good structure quality.
Yeah, this is intention being a big thing. Order of operations being obviously you've just heard them talk about it. You know, you guys were talking about it, that's super important. The concepts, like what are we trying to get out of this, I think would lead people down a better path instead of what should I do? Why am I doing it? Like going back to your why. And talk about this on the other show a little bit, but don't try and borrow somebody else's why. You should have your own why, and it should be well developed in terms of why am I warming up? And then that will lead you to the what and the how. So ask yourself those questions. The other thing is like, again, mobility for me is, to Jeff's point, is your ability to move and control that movement. So there are many ways, different ways to apply this. And I think a lot of, going back to what I was saying, is people get it in their head that it needs to look a certain way. It doesn't mean you need to be on the corner on the turf somewhere on a mat, sitting still and working through these very finite movements all the time. Mm-hmm. Oh, that can be very much part of it. But it fries me sometimes when I go, I'm going to go work on my mobility, and then I see him sitting on the fucking floor. Like, what are we doing down there? Do you know what you're doing? Now, if you know what you're doing and there's an application to this that makes a lot of sense, okay, great. But if you're just like, oh, I'm going to go work on my hip mobility and I go into a 90-90, I do 90-90 because I'm supposed to do 90-90.
And they're on their fucking phone.
Or whatever.
Down, dude. Yeah. The chest is fucking rounded.
Did you even prepare that tissue prior to being there to be able to get what you need out of there? So yeah, I think when you're looking at people's mobility programs, no matter what it looks like, it's really about sort of what's the hierarchy of importance here and why am I doing what I'm
And anything you see on Instagram is an expression of mobility from these guys that are in FR
stuff. Yeah.
All of that stuff he's gained, and you can look back and he talks about like, okay, these are the regressions, but like the things that you see on Instagram where it's like, wow, I want to do that. That is not for you. That is for the person that is
goes back to what he said earlier. Know your why.
Yeah, why are you doing this? And yeah, so I could talk about that all day, but next question.
Next question. I follow a lot of fitness pages on Instagram and have been hearing a lot of the same stuff, like eat more protein, sugar is bad for you, etc. Why does my feed look the same as it did last year?
Yeah, man, I have so many things to say about this.
Wow, it's a great question.
Is he asking or she asking how the Instagram algorithm works? Like, why am I?
Because we're trying to figure it out.
I think it's a bit of that.
I don't think anyone knows, actually.
No, I think it's a little bit of that. I think there's some other things. I'm curious what you guys' thoughts are.
Well, I think that literally, and I feel the same way, so I'll just go ahead and jump on that. When I open up my Instagram feed and I go through the Explore and just every person, yeah, you're right. It's the same shit. And I'm bored with it. But yeah, you need to eat more protein. There's all of these things that you need to do that everyone's kind of getting back to the simples and basics. And every influencer is doing that because they want to gain their following. They want to build their following. They want to add something that you're going to like, right? That you want to eat up.
But that's also just a general thing or trend or whatever that people need to do in our society right now because they undereat their protein. And I know that's very general because what is undereat. But I mean, if you look at kids and what they're being fed in school, for lunches and stuff like that, where's the protein?
We've done nutrition for years, CeCe. Every person that comes through this door is deficient in protein.
A lot of times they are. When you say every single, it's probably not that much of a stretch when they first get started.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think for me, it goes much deeper. It's just like a metaphor for where we are as a people. You know what I mean? When you look on Instagram, I was just having this conversation. I don't spend a ton of time, not nearly as much time on our gym feed as I do on the podcast feed. For this is, at the end of the day, there's business involved here, and we have to divide and conquer. So CeCe handles a lot of what you see on Red Dot as well as the rest of the team. And I got on there the other day and I was scrolling through, and I had to ask myself, when was the last time I really scrolled through the Red Dot feed? And I follow fitness pages and health and wellness people on the Iron Sight side of things, but I can't keep up with all the shit on both pages. Plus the apparel page, there's no fucking way. So I got on there, I was scrolling through there, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, nothing has changed, right? Nothing has changed. And I started to get a little annoyed with it. And then I asked myself this question basically that we're hearing right now, which are we literally saying the same things? And these are like top level influencers, by the way, that I'm hearing saying this, as well as the peanut gallery.
Well, because every person that follows them regurgitates what they say, right?
So I think going back to like this metaphor that I'm seeing, really what this boils down to is the fundamentals are never going to change. And it's apparently people don't want to listen to it. So they keep listening to it, but not changing it. So there's no execution in what these people are saying. And it's getting a little ridiculous to me in that I'm starting to hear like our fucking macronutrients have pronouns now, basically. Like I heard this guy the other day, and this dude.
I heard this recently.
No, I can't.
This dude has 1 million freaking followers. He's written the books. He's been on every podcast, TV shows. He's propped up there as, this guru of sorts. And I don't want to insult him outside of what I'm going to say about what he said, right? And with you need to eat more protein, he said. And so as the way he explains his diet is I eat a protein forward diet. Now I'm just listening to this. If we have to get progressive with the science, like I start to get a little impatient. And when I hear things like that, I'm like, what are you trying to say? You're trying to say the exact same fucking shit we've been saying for years. Nothing changes here. So I think what it really boils down to is why does it look the same? Because it is. It doesn't change. Yeah. And the only way we can make it sound more interesting so that it shows up in the algorithm and in the feed is to use terms like protein forward diet, right? Or come up with some new tribe so that we can wave some new flag and get behind that, whether it's keto, whether it's, vegan, vegetarian, some other, twisted way of looking at it. I think it's a metaphor for all the things that are going on in society because I'm not getting the attention I need, or it's just not interesting enough today because we're constantly inundated with basic things. We've got to get wild. We have to get wild and we have to say stuff when the reality of it is there's nothing wild here. But it all says the same shit. Drink more water, get more sleep, eat more protein, eat less sugar, right? Get more exercise. Make sure you do your cardio, lift weights. Like none of that shit changes. So what would you expect it's going to change? Like, are you looking for a new answer? Are you looking for some profoundness in the algorithm or in your Instagram to change things? You're not going to find it ever. It may hit you a little different because somebody kind of provides this different perspective. And if that's the thing that gets you to eat more fucking protein, God bless them. That is awesome. But it's no different than the thing the guy said a year ago or the year before that, or the person, on the next square in your feed says, or whatever. The bottom line is we have to package macronutrient balance, micronutrient intake, targeted supplementation. And, when we start looking at like these diet tribes or whatever else and the types of diets that you're eating, nothing wrong with that. Sleep and stress management and exercise. If it's not packaged in tits and ass, people aren't going to listen to it. And so that's what we've done. That's what we've done. We've packaged it that way. And it's you, the person that's looking at it, you're responsible for it. Like I am responsible for it because somewhere in there we clicked or we think that's interesting and here we are fucking talking about it. So it doesn't change and it's not going to change. So don't expect it to change. We are going to learn new things as we go. But the basics aren't going to change. It's human physiology. That's what it is.
And real quick, stop learning from Instagram. Oh. If you want to learn something, like there's to be honest, there's about 12 people that I can think of, and they're all high name people that you can follow and get good content from. There's stuff that you can go on YouTube for, and then you can actually pay for a coach to learn and go through things. And these people are out there. You're going to learn. going through Instagram and having things pop up where it's like one random dude in your Explore said this and you're now freaking out. Like, no, dude, like just
chill.
Yeah.
Chill. Yeah. That's
Get
a good
off
point.
Instagram.
It's not going to change. It is what it is.